also should join us. Our distinguished delegates, Dr. Omar, my very good friend, your driver is around. I recognize your presence with us. Madam Ruth Kamala, sorry if I pronounce it wrongly. We recognize you in the midst. Our distinguished participants, our able lecturers from the university, we recognize you, sir. Media, all protocols duly and respectfully observed. It is indeed a pleasure to associate myself with this important convergence of Regional Conference of Youth West Africa 2024. The initiative is organized by the African Youth Advisory Board under the African Union Commission in collaboration with the UNDRR and the National Disaster Management Agency, the Gambia. The purpose of this gathering, essentially, is to empower youths of Africa in addressing key disaster risk reduction and climate change issues in the continent. Climate crisis continue to negatively affect sustainable development. The frequency and intensity of climate-related disasters like floods are negatively impacting on people and the environment. Disaster is a threat to life and livelihood, and this common enemy needs a comprehensive and in-depth understanding of factors influencing, especially in Africa. Without much ado, I sincerely want to invite UNDRR Africa Chief to kindly deliver his statement.
National Disaster Management Agency, and hopefully also Mr. Carl Frederick Paul, the head of the UN Resident Coordinator to the Gambia. So on behalf of the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, I'm honored to join you all here today for the first regional conference on youth on disaster risk reduction in West Africa 2024. As we all know, climate change and its associated risk is having devastating consequences around the world and in West Africa. We see this reflected in complex ways where many communities live with the combined impacts of disaster events, environmental degradation, climate change, and conflict. The recent floods in West and Central Africa have affected 4 million people, and these realities serve as a stark reminder of the growing risk faced by sub-Saharan African countries as a whole. In West Africa specifically, we know that achieving the Sustainable Development Goals is not where it should be, and also youth are often left behind. However, there is hope. We at UNDRR firmly believe in the power of youth to drive positive change. This conference, organized by the African Youth Advisory Board under the African Union Commission, with our collaboration and that of the National Disaster Management Agency of the Gambia, it really underlines this belief. We acknowledge the capacity of youth to influence decision-making processes on behalf of their communities, and also their ability to communicate and bring meaningful change in behavior and attitudes. So UNDR supports and will continue to harness the energy and motivation of youth to find solutions to risk and participate in disaster risk reduction for enhanced resilience. And this will be aligned with the UN strategy, and I quote, Youth 2030, working with and for young people. We believe that youth must have the capacity to engage in building resilience and reduce disasters. We are convinced that youth are vital agents for change and for driving innovation and innovative communication to enhance the implementation of the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction. We also believe that disaster risk reduction should be child responsive, focusing on the specific risks that children and youth face, as well as involving children in efforts and initiatives to reduce disaster risk. Children have unique needs, and it's important that the entire disaster management cycle is child sensitive and child responsive. So solutions must be holistic, they must be inclusive, and consider also boys and girls' exposure and coping capacities to make them less vulnerable. They must address underlying risk drivers like climate change, poverty, stigma, and gender discrimination. And we must encompass the voices of young people in the design of these activities. So, as the climate crisis escalates, decisions taken by future policymakers, engineers, business owners, community leaders, and every household must be based on understanding of disaster risk. It is vital that this understanding starts with children and youth, so youth are also best equipped for the future. We must enable young people to achieve their full potential, reduce vulnerabilities, and lay the foundations for resilient societies today and into the future. So, for that reason, UNDRA promotes safe, equitable, and continuous access to quality education, including through the mainstreaming of disaster risk reduction actions in school curricula. And we all support and endorse the role of youth in disaster risk reduction across Africa. So UNDRA will stand alongside the African Union, the African Youth Advisory Board, and will support all your endeavors over the next 2 days and moving forward, of course. We are dedicated to engaging youth in the development and implementation of effective policies for disaster risk reduction and climate action, and also for providing opportunities to enhance your skills and knowledge and amplifying your voices on international platforms. So, this conference is an opportunity to showcase your leadership, creativity, and commitment to a more resilient future. We hope it is used to help and build a stronger, more unified West Africa that is prepared to face the challenges of climate change. In conclusion, I would like to just recommit and reiterate my office's support to ensure that the outcomes of this conference are promoted in key disaster risk reduction forums, not only in Africa, but at the global level. I thank you for the opportunity.
Risk reduction. I come from Zimbabwe. It was a long trip to get here, but worth it. I've seen the smiling cause for really in Africa, and I appreciate the welcome. And above all, we also want to commend the support by the National Disaster Management Agency and the UNDRR in ensuring that this initiative is a success. During our term as the Africa Youth Advisory Board, this is the first regional activity that we've had, and we are proud to say this is not going to be the last. So we invite all partners to also partner with us even on different platforms to ensure the success of our initiatives. As the previous speaker alluded to also, the role of youth in disaster risk reduction has to be imperative and also comply and implore that all member states also appreciate our role and support us just as how they have supported our member Modu. We are very proud and happy and grateful for the Gambia government for the support accorded to us. So basically where we are here, the main outcome is going to be the Bandung Declaration. This is whereby we're taking recommendations from the youth in West Africa and taking them and tabling them to the authorities so that we take into consideration the contributions of youth, because we do not want to be seen only when it's time to come and provide aid. We also want to influence policy. We also want to be able to participate in such platforms and also be able to design interventions around new technologies, GIS, and all others. So I'm grateful for this opportunity, and I'm going to elaborate more on the board. But basically, it's a 15-member board that has been established under the African Union Commission, and we're representing all African youth in disaster risk reduction. And more of our activities, I'm going to elaborate them on our first session, because we've already done more activities around Africa in different countries such as Morocco, Egypt, Zimbabwe, and DRC. So I hope that this is going to be an engaging 2 days. And I also want to implore you to please add your recommendations. Please give us your feedback so that when we program further, we're able to appreciate your additions and also improve as the youth board. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Chairperson or president of this organization, my dear brother and friend, invited guests from the African Union, the UN Resident Coordinator's Office, youths represented here, members of the media, and all other protocols respectfully observed. Good morning to all of you. I would like to begin by acknowledging that it is my profound honor and privilege to address this distinguished gathering of young people on disaster risk reduction in West Africa. This conference comes at a crucial moment when our region faces escalating risk from climate change, environmental degradation, and natural disasters. These challenges threaten lives, livelihoods, and our shared future. However, this gathering also reflects our collective resolve and shared commitment to addressing these pressing issues collaboratively and strategically. It is through forums like this that we recognize the transformative role of young people in disaster risk reduction. Your energy, creativity, and determinations are essential in building resilient communities and fostering innovation solutions to mitigate the impacts of disasters. This conference is more than just a platform for discussion. It is a call to action, a reminder of the responsibility we all share to protect our region and ensure a sustainable future for generations to come. The theme, Building Back Better, the role of youth in disaster mitigation access across West Africa, unquote, underscores the critical importance of harnessing the potential of young people in shaping a more resilient future. As a region, we are no strangers to the devastating impacts of disasters. Floods, droughts, deforestation, and urban vulnerability have significantly disrupted lives, economies, and ecosystems. The imperative to recover and rebuild stronger while empowering our youth to lead these efforts has never been more urgent. Disaster risk reduction, DRR, is a cornerstone of sustainable development. It ensures that our communities are prepared to mitigate and respond to disasters, while fostering recovery pathways that restore not only physical infrastructure, but also social cohesion and economic stability. Young people, who make up about 60% of West Africa's population, are the ones who should drive these efforts by all means. Their energy, innovation, and adaptability are indispensable in developing community-based solutions, utilizing technology to predict and manage risk and advocating for climate resilience across the sub-Saharan Africa. On a personal note, I see this conference as an important platform for empowering youth to take on leadership roles in disaster mitigation. The Gambia's own experiences with climate-related challenges have taught us that inclusive approaches are essential for building resilient communities. Our National Assembly is committed to enacting policies and laws that prioritize youth involvement in disaster preparedness and mitigation, ensuring that they have access to the resources and platforms needed to make meaningful contributions. Around the world, we have seen inspiring examples of youth-led efforts in disaster response and recovery. In 2019, for example, we have seen how the unprecedented efforts of young volunteers in Mozambique were instrumental in rebuilding communities following Cyclone Idai, one of the deadliest tropical cyclones recorded to have hit that country, along with Malawi and Zimbabwe. In Mozambique alone, over 1.3 million people were reported to have been affected. In Bangladesh, young people have harnessed technology to develop early warning systems that have saved countless lives during devastating floods. This innovation points to the power of youth-driven solutions in addressing the vulnerabilities faced by disaster-prone regions, We all know how places like Bangladesh are prone to recurring natural disasters. Yet, the proactive engagement of its youth have turned these challenges into opportunities for resilience. These examples serve as lessons to all of us to what young people can achieve when they are empowered to act. I firmly believe that the youth of West Africa can emulate and even surpass these successes if given the tools, training, and opportunities to lead. As we deliberate over the next 2 days, I urge every participant to approach these discussions with a spirit of collaboration and innovation. Let us commit to creating actionable solutions that not only address immediate risk but also lay the groundwork for sustainable development and resilience. Distinguished guests, in conclusion, I wish to commend the Africa Youth Advisory Board on Disaster Risk Reduction and the African Union Commission for their visionary leadership in organizing this conference. I also extend my gratitude to all the participants who have gathered here with a shared determination to make a difference. Together, we can turn challenges into opportunities and build a future where West Africa is not only prepared to face disasters, but thrives in their aftermath. Thank you.
I really want to recognize the presence of our partners, African Union, our able lecturer at the university, National Disaster Management Agency staff, and the organizers and the participants, also the youths. First and foremost, we all know that the Gambia government recognized the youths of this country, and they place high premium when it comes to youth affairs in this country, because we actually acknowledge that youths in this country are the greatest asset of the Gambia. So we can actually attest to that. Personally, I am honored and privileged to associate myself with this conference, this youth conference related to disaster. Are so well intended, and all meaningful training couldn't have come at a better time. The shift in recent years from disaster response to disaster prevention and disaster risk reduction, DRR, is largely motivated by the high toll of disasters, both in terms of human suffering and the loss of economic assets, mostly affecting the young people. Due to their disproportionate nature, natural disasters affect young people, women, men, girls, and boys differently. In fact, in most cases, due to socio-economic conditions, as well as cultural beliefs and traditional practice, women and girls are more affected by disaster, including loss of life, livelihood, and productive assets, an increase in gender-based violence as well. A most disturbing impact brought on by disaster is the adverse condition of migration, which make people choose to migrate temporarily or permanently to other regions or countries to seek better living conditions. These issues pose a great challenge for disaster management, as information on affected population is often limited to aggregated numbers and rarely goes beyond the household level. Cognizance of this, the government adopted recently several policies, including the National Disaster Management Policy, Population, Education, Youth and Health, to name but few. The revised National Disaster Management Policy and Population Policy 2024 to 2034 to better cater for an integrated approach that brings together the effort of the government, UN agencies, NGOs, civil society, local authorities, youth, women, and local community to pursue the most viable, effective, and sustainable disaster to cope the incidences of disaster in the learning environment. The gathering today is a clear manifestation of this, as young people in DRR, with the support of African Union, is championing a discussion that would no doubt help to bridge the gap of awareness and ultimately harness the potential of youth to contribute proactively in disaster risk reduction through experimental learning. The capacity to anticipate and analyze possible disaster threats is a prerequisite for prudent decision-making and effective action. Yet, even practical early warning will not ensure successful preventive action unless there is a fundamental change of attitude towards disaster perception. On these premises, there is a need to work through stakeholders and partners to be able to undertake rapid assessment, especially during disaster. Certainly, the youth constituents has the numbers and the potential to do so. The need to enhance the capacity of youths, especially in expanding their disaster risk reduction to grassroots, is of great significance, since it will minimize coordination concerns and enhance great community participation. Therefore, I urge you to optimize this opportunity to deduct sensible and practical recommendations as how we can build upon the moment using the youth infrastructure and that of NDMA so as to achieve greater impact. I have no doubt that the caliber of young people I see in this room will deliver just that. I wish you a successful deliberation, and let me use this opportunity to thank the government of the Gambia, the African Union, and the partners, and also to declare this youth conference open.
When Molamin approached me, I was very delighted. I said, Molamin, it seems that you were reading my mind. Okay, not to waste your time. First of all, I would also like to acknowledge the presence of my executive director, who found us almost at the tail end of the opening statement by the Honorable Deputy Speaker. And also I would like to acknowledge all of you, your presence, and then our delegates from Nigeria and Zimbabwe. Welcome to the Gambia, the smiling coast of West Africa. My presentation today will look at NDMA at glance, as already Dr. mentioned, because some of, or many of Gambians didn't know what NDMA is all about. So sometimes even I do have that challenge. They will say, you people will not see you until when disaster happens. And they didn't know that we do work behind the scenes. Okay, the presentation outline first, we will look at NDMA at glance, the act, the policy, the strategies that we have in place, and then the contingency plan that guides our implementation in the country. First of all, NDMA, before becoming an agency, was under the purview of the Vice President in 1996. And then from there, they established a committee called Disaster Relief, Rehabilitation and Resettlement to see the issues of disasters in the country. But then by then, Gambia Red Cross Society was taking care of all those disaster and humanitarian works in the country because there was no agency established. And then the objective was just only to be doing relief distributions to the communities affected. And then from there, 2006 to late 2009, it went to the UNDP as a project. So being in the UNDP for a project, then the government of the Gambia felt the necessity that we need to have an institution that would coordinate disasters in the country. Because already Red Cross is mandated to do something else, so they cannot mainstream the issues of overall national coordination of disasters with their work. And then under the UNDP project, that's where they helped the government of the Gambia to develop the act of the agency in 2008, the policy and the strategy. And then in 2009, November, the agency was established and start operationalization under the Office of the Vice President. So we are mandated to coordinate disasters or all emergencies in the country. So now we can get to the organograms of the institution or the agency. When after the establishment of the act and the policy and the strategy in 2008, our line ministry is the Office of the Vice President, who is our overall boss. And then he or she chairs the overall issues of disasters in the country. And they are called Disaster Management Governing Council, chaired by the Vice President. But then in this council, it's not Vice President alone in this. You have other ministries, all ministries in the country are part of this council to help the Vice Presidents to do. Already the previous speakers have mentioned it in the morning. Disaster is cross-cutting issue. And it's like it's not one man show. So everybody have a role to play. So all these ministers are part of the governing council, help the Vice President to do the work and then to do some strategic decision making when it comes to disaster issues. And then the executive director is the secretary to this governing council. And after the governing and the executive director, we also have technicians at technical level. That's the technical advisory groups, or as recommended by the UNDRR, to have a national DRR platform. So these technical groups, we didn't invent any wheel, we just maintain them to become the national platform members for the DRR. And then we have a decentralized structures in all the regions. We have 7 regions, and then we have all our officers in these regions, and they are working with the mayors and the governors at regional level. So at regional level, the governors and the mayors are the vice presidents there, helping the coordinators to be able to implement their work. But then at regional level also, the regional coordinator also is working with technicians there, called the Regional Disaster Management Committees, from different institutions at regional level, combined together to work with our regional coordinators at regional level. And then at district level also, we have the chiefs, and the chiefs also is working. If you can see the arrows, like it's back and forth, because communication goes up and then it comes down, so that the work can be easy and then implement as it should be. So district level, the chief is the head there, and then working with his teams. And then we have district disaster management committees also at district level, also helping the chiefs to be able to do their work. And then at village level also, we have the alcalos. But then the alcalos at village level are closely working with the VDCs, because we know in the local government at village level, the VDCs are kind of head in the village. So they have to be working closely with the alcalo on the issue of disasters. And then at village level also, they develop disaster management committees. So all these structures is a mandatory as indicated in the Act. So that's why we have all these structures in the country, from the regional to the district to the village level. And then the functions of the Disaster Management Governing Council, just to mention a few, to ensure the implementation of the Act, advise the government on the overall matters relating to disasters and coordination in the country, and then also to advise the Vice President on the needs when disaster strikes, the kind of support that needs to be given to the affected communities. And then also state of an emergency, because they do meet. In the Act, it is mentioned that they should be meet 3 times in a year. So during those meetings, that's where they will also be informed by the executive director on the issues related to disasters. Then that will help them to be able to advise the Vice President on what to do on the matters of disasters. And then also when that happens, you know, security is very important. When disasters or any emergency strike, the first thing that we ask is the securities to help us to be able to control the public for us and the environment. So when we need that kind of situations also, we didn't have the power and the mandate. So the IGP or the CDS is always in the picture because they are also part of the governing council. So they give us those security advices in terms of disasters in the country to do the deployment in the areas. And then also help regional disaster management coordinators to have resources to implement because they also have their work. We have a national work plan, but we also have regional and district work plans that needs to be implemented by the communities themselves. Because when we say disaster, disaster is now community-led DRR. So let them take ownership as the youths want to take ownership and take the lead in DRR. Next, Mohammed. And then this is the information flow that we have in the agency. When you looked at, you see disaster, that red star is disaster. Anything red is not like pleasant. So when we have when disaster happens in the country, the first thing that the agency need to, is to get information from the regional coordinators. Wherever disaster happens, the regional coordinators are there working with their committees. So now they will get the information, they will be informed on the kind of disaster that happens within their region. So when they get the information, they will filter it to the director of operation because he is also overseeing all operations in the agency. Then from there, the operations director now will get to the executive director to inform him what is happening from the regions. And then the executive director then also relate the message to the vice president as the boss to discuss on what is happening in the country or at the regional level. So this is how we communicate. And then from there now again, the executive director, when he communicates it to the vice president, he will get back to the operations of director to give him or her the feedback he got from the vice president. Then that will also help the deputy executive director, the director of operations to get back to the regional coordinators, giving them the feedback from the central level, so that we have that kind of communication and then we all communicate and speak the same language. And then from there, the regional coordinators, as we said now, in collaboration with the director of operations, will quickly come and see how best they are going to develop a response plan to respond to a particular disaster in that community or in that region or in the country at large. And then from there, the executive director will not stop. A communication will now go to after the governing council. The governing council also will now communicate back, called the crisis management. Initially in the second slide where I talked about the national platform and the technical advisory groups, they will be communicated also. And then from there, the UNCT also, because it's not government alone. We have the UN system, you have the NGOs, you have the CBOs, all part of and the private sector, taking part in the governing council decision making matters. So this is how we communicate, the line of communication from regions to the operations director, executive director, vice president. Then from the executive director, operations to regions, and then you get to the national platform, that's the crisis management technical working group, and then you get to the UN bodies and other stakeholders to be informed on what is happening in the country. And then the vision, the policy here, the 2008 policy, the vision is to strengthen the coping capacity of people against all hazards. I think since in the morning, the first presenters and the speakers have been talking about this capacity building, because if you don't have capacity, you cannot respond or you cannot take care of the risk or hazard surrounding you. So the mission is to continuously build up the country's resilience from shocks, being natural or man-made. And then the objectives is creating an integrated national capacity from climate change impacts. As I always say, climate change and disaster, they are married, husband and a wife. Climate change is the husband, disaster is the wife. Because the impact of climate change is causing disasters. So disaster will give birth to the problems that we are facing. Strengthening local resurrection capacities of communities also is an objective in the policy. Ensuring the DRR is systematically integrated in policies and programs. All this have been mentioned by previous speakers. It seems like they already have a balance of the presentation. strengthening and integrated national disaster preparedness and response capacity at all levels. So these are just few and the key objectives in the policy that we have at NDMA. And then the scope of the policy is an overall guiding framework for addressing all kinds of disasters or risk in the country, and then also promoting priority measures to address all this that we have. Next slide. And then the focus areas of the strategy intervention already mentioned, making the DRR as a development priority, because we have to mainstream them. If not, all this development that we are doing here, it's zero. Because disaster is something that within the twinkle of an eye, it can bring development, but within a twinkle of an eye, it can disrupt development. Improving early warning systems. How do we communicate, inform people earlier before anything happens so that they can take care of themselves to save lives and then properties that we have in place. So early warning is very important. It saves life. Already the speaker, deputy speaker made mention of it and citing some Asian countries on the early warning system that they have in place. And then here also we have, because we are collaborating with the Department of Water Resources, who normally gives us weather forecast, telling us the rainfall patterns that we have, and then the weather and the sea frequencies that we normally have in the country. Addressing priority development concerns to the use underlying risk factors. You should know within your environment what are the risks, and how are you going to handle this risk. If you don't know, it will be difficult to address the issue of disasters in the country. Effective disaster response to disaster preparedness. You cannot respond whilst you did not prepare yourself in disaster. And even if it is not in disaster, even our lives is a disaster. Because you have to be planning yourself, A, B, C, D, to be able to respond to things that you may encounter along the line. Okay, the challenges that we have in the policy. Low level of risk awareness and knowledge on DRR, especially in the country, is a challenge. People do think that disaster is only when it happens you respond. No, you take measures before it happens. So people don't have that knowledge. So, but we are trying at agency level with partners to make sure that that awareness raising is very high. People should know that disaster is everyone's business. Do not sufficiently, DRR not sufficiently integrated into development policies and planning. Already it was mentioned, and then I even saw it should be mainstream in school curriculums and the like, and at agency level we are also advocating for that. Because we learned that at the university they have, but they are just teaching the basic of disasters, but not into details. So we want it to be having different models, become a standalone subject at the University of the Gambia. Maybe they can, like, kind of climate change and disaster risk reduction, something should be in the university and schools also. Primary, starting from primary schools or nursery, because if you look at the Asian countries, the teaching of disasters starts from nursery schools. They say grow with them. So it starts from nursery level. They start to teach you. You can see, if you go online, you can see Asia, where it had, if at all, earthquake is about to happen, the drilling exercise the nursery school students will be. So they prepare them from that early stage. So if you have that preparation from that early stage and you grow up with, it's like when disaster happens, it's going to be something normal to you because already you have the knowledge and the skills and the know-how. So it's very important. And then thank God also from the recent National Development Plan of the country, we able to at least have a space to mainstream the issue of disasters in the development plan. So, but we are also urging all sectors to also mainstream the issue of disasters in their sectoral plans, so that the developments that we are talking about can be achieved and maintained. Inadequate DRR capacities, already mentioned human resource, finance, materials, the space even, it's very limited or sometimes it's not available. So how do we going to make sure that we have all these things in place? Implementation of the policy recommendations, like proper planning. If we look at our urban setting here, year in, year out, flooding. Why is it that we are having that flooding? The development is not well planned. We are congested. Structures are anyhow, that we are not using our building codes. So we just construct anyhow we want. And then when it rains, water will not find a way to go. So, and then water must get out, and water will find its way. Whether we give way or not, water will find its way. So either it will come back to the communities, or it will find a natural way out to the streams or to the river. So our settlements are very important. We have to be very careful on how we settle. You don't settle haphazardly. Sometimes people settle on waterways, and that causes flooding. And in the country, that is the biggest challenge that we have. People settle on waterway. And even if you do your hazard mapping or risk mapping, and then those places are identified as hotspots, and then even people to evacuate or to leave those places, that's a challenge. So many things involved in that. So the young ones coming up, it's a caution and an information that I want to share. When we are doing our development planning, let's factor a proper urban planning to at least not to say we are completely going to get rid of issues of disasters in the country, but that we can minimize the issues of disasters, the destruction that it causes in the communities. And then also protecting, conservation, forest issues, environment, all these things are challenges. We know forest, environment, waste dumping, solid waste dumping, and even liquid waste dumping all over. Now, some people will construct their toilets and then the pipe will be out in the street, affecting the environment. Our health is at risk. So the strategic focus of the NDMA strategy is finance and resource mobilization, partnership building, that is one, with this RECOI that we are trying to build partnership with them, because this is our first meeting with them. So from here, I think we will going to strengthen this partnership to be working closely with them, because they are here to help us to do our work. And if they take over, we will just sleep. Because already we will empower and give them skills, so they take over. And then also as the future leaders of tomorrow, they continue with the development of the countries or the communities that we have. Communication is very important. If we are not communicating in disaster, we are not saving lives. You communicate, you save lives. You try to maintain or strengthen your developments that you have. And then also continue to educate people to know what to do next. Monitoring and evaluations. You cannot do without monitoring and see what is happening. That will inform your next decision. Development plans. Let's have plans in place. So many plans are there for disaster management. You can have plan for preparedness. You can have plan for mitigation. You can have plan for evacuation. Because you cannot jumble up everything in one. But then you have to have all these plans to be guiding you on the kind of disasters that you have at hand to be respond to. And then this is one of the picture. I know that now everybody is familiar with this picture. Because every session I go, this is the picture that they will present on, even on climate issues and the like. This was 2022 flooding that happens in Banjul. So you can even see the urban planning that I'm talking about here. Where do you think the water will find its way? So the water gets into the communities, in the houses, bedrooms. If you go for assessment, that's the time you will know what disaster is all about. Everything in the house will become inundated. You will see people topping up their chairs and bed on top because the house is flooded. They cannot sleep there. The mattresses, everything is soaked in the water. So this is a picture that I bring to see some of the impacts of disasters. And then we also have a plan, that's the multi-hazard contingency plan, that helps us to do some hazard mapping to know what are some of the hazards that we have in the country, and they are also disturbing the country in terms of disasters. So the objective of the contingency plan is to identify those things so that we're able to reduce and maximize some of the impacts of disasters that happens, and then also to ensure that we have an effective humanitarian response plans in place, because you cannot have a plan and everybody is like here and there, but a coordinated manner is very important in disasters, because disasters also, some people take it as an opportunity to enrich themselves when it comes to response. So you need to be very strong to have that coordination in place. And so, as already mentioned, coordination exists to avoid those duplications, delays, and other constraints you might have during the time of response. Amen. As I said, this is the hazard ranking from the contingency plan. We have floods. When we did our hazard ranking, we realized that flood becomes the #1 hazard that we have in the country, and windstorm. Every year it comes, and I think all of you can attest to that. Every year we say flooding, flooding. They will say NDMA, flooding, flooding. Everybody, media will come to our office. Windstorm, windstorm. This happens every year. Fire and domestic fires also happens, especially domestic fires. And even it was on Monday evening, I was telling my director of operation, wind starts, we have to do something. The regional coordinators to start that sensitization, especially at rural areas, where they will be cooking outside, and when the wind comes with a speed, the fire can be spread, and then it causes destructions in the communities. So those are also some of the problems. Epidemic also, this one also we do have, like cholera outbreak. We do also have measles in the country from Minister of Health reports. These are some of the things they are challenged with. But also, if you looked at this also will link to the global pandemic that we have, the coronavirus, the famous coronavirus. So that's why we also need to prepare our health system in terms of health emergency issues. Drought also is a problem in the country. It's not every year, but we do experience drought also. And when that happens also, it becomes a problem in the country. It becomes food crisis that we will challenge with, malnutrition and so many things related to it. Pest infestation also do happen. It's not frequent, but then we do have around 2012, 13, I don't know, there was a pest infestation in LRR where farmers were not able to harvest any rice because we were having migrating birds called quella. And they said that bird, the moment it gets to your rice field, within 10 or 30 seconds, the rice field is completely gone. They have eaten everything. So that's why we bring it. It's not common, but it do common. So all these things, you bring them to prepare yourself so that you not be found under Catch 2022. And then the reporting format for the contingency plan that we have is whenever we get a report, we have a flash update. And hours after an emergency, and then we started to develop a SITREP. Maybe not all of you, but then, I don't know, but we normally share that SITREP. Even this month, we share a SITREP. That is a situational report. We normally share with partners, telling them how the issues of disasters and the number of people affected in the countries are, and what kind of supports they need. We give out that. And then situational analysis also within 72 hours. Using the secondary and the primary data that will determine to help inform decision what kind of response will be given. And then after that, then a detailed assessment they will do. These are just rapid one that will inform decision makers on what to do. But then that will not stop. It's a simultaneous thing. Regional coordinators and their teams will be doing assessment, detailed assessment to know the number of people affected in each household and what are some of their immediate needs that needs to be given to them. So that detailed assessment will be done, but it's a multi-sectoral assessment, not done by NDMA alone, but with other stakeholders also. And then, thank you. Lamin, for that sharing a very interesting presentation by Doctor. Doctor, your presentation everywhere since yesterday, I've been telling you, I wish our IT staff, they are here present, because we also have a GIS officer who is also helping us at the agency level, but I think knowledge is never enough. So, but notwithstanding, we'll see how best we can continue or have that collaboration with you to help us to strengthen our GIS, especially we do have flood, but then we also wanted to have other models that will help the agency and the country at large. Thank you very much.
obviously I've attended many forums, nationally and internationally, but this one is a living memory. What I will just say briefly is to encourage you, youths, nationally and internationally, to engage. Do not sit on high horses as we have seen most of us doing. Sitting on high horses leads you to ignorance. Come down to the level of anyone, provided the person is not a madman. You cannot come down to the level of a madman. But come down to the level of anyone that you think you can tap knowledge from. You are seekers of knowledge. You are going to be elders of tomorrow. You are agents of change. You have the future laid down before you. So keep up the momentum, and God will lead you to the game. Thank you.
Speak on behalf of the Africa Youth Advisory Board, and I would like to commend efforts made by the government to support our member in designing and also executing this prestigious event. This is a regional activity which is a first for us as a board, and we are proud for the support, and also we are proud that we had enough youth representation amongst us. My key takeaways involve interactions I managed to have with some of the youth here who are doing so well within their own youth organizations to combat challenges around climate change. So my desire is that beyond this activity, may the Gambian government also invest in supporting youth organizations. I also saw that this also came up also in the declaration that they want to work with the government, they are willing to collaborate, ensure visibility and raise awareness. And all these concepts are also going to benefit the whole of Africa. And as we all agreed, we're all, Africa is a very young continent. We are the owners. It is time for us to take up initiative and develop solutions that are youth sensitive, come up with policies that are youth sensitive, and also make sure that there's proper representation of youth in all key decision making processes and platforms, because this is where our voices are able to come out. I also want to leave the mandate to us youth also. Let us not be passive and just wait to be handed things. Let us use our intellect to be innovative, to come up with new designs, to come up with tried and tested methods. Yesterday's presentations also revealed that there is a lot that we don't know. I can testify that I had no idea that the drums had a different meaning. We all assumed it was called traditional dance, but it is a form of communication that has been used prior us in also as part of early warning systems. So this shows us that there's a lot we can learn from our elders, and we should also do so humbly and also integrate these with the new innovations we want to prefer. So above all else, I would like to appreciate the platform, and also thank you so much. I enjoyed Gambia. I also now have a bracelet. Thank you very much.
Statement of young persons on African approaches to disaster reduction at the first regional conference of youth on disaster reduction, West Africa 2024. We young persons participating at the first regional conference of youth on disaster and risk reduction, West Africa 2024, considering the significant impact of recent disasters in Senegal, the Gambia, DRC, Nigeria, Cameroon, Chad, Zambia, Niger, and elsewhere on the continent, acknowledging the need for youths across West Africa to engage in building African approaches to disaster risk reduction through knowledge exchange to enable collective actions, recognizing that the African Union guided framework on disaster risk reduction, including Sendai framework, including Sendai 2015 to 2030, and the African Regional Strategy for Disaster Risk Reduction. Mindful of the increasing disasters in Africa and their continental impacts, particularly issues of floods, droughts, climate change, and the emerging rhetoric presented by technology. Noting that young people have an important role in fostering continental aspirations of Agenda 2063 and other development aspirations at the global, regional, and national levels. Emphasizing that youth engagement is integral to the advancement of disaster reduction action in Africa, desiring that there are needs to be guidance on how young people should think through African solutions to African problems, particularly within the disaster risk reduction context. Desiring that the needs to be guidance on how young people should think through African solutions to African problems, particularly within the disaster risk reduction, affirming African principles of Pan-Africanism and solidarity, commits to furthering disaster risk reduction actions in African and the African way. Hereby, request the African Union Commission and partners expound on African approaches to disaster risk reduction, reflecting on the laws and policies across West Africa to provide a roadmap to young people to meaningfully engage in this process. Number 2, call upon government in West Africa to prioritize disaster risk governance, investment, and increase allocation for disaster risk reduction for resilience in the national budgets, policies, and plans. 3, request West African governments to allocate adequate resources towards building resilience and preparing for disasters, including investing in early warning systems, infrastructural development, and youth-led community initiatives. 4, call for the inclusion of DRR curriculum in schools and universities. 5, governments to collaborate with youth organizations to lead public awareness campaigns and disaster preparedness and response. 6, government to facilitate for the inclusion of Gambian youth delegation in international conferences around climate change and disaster risk reduction. And finally, facilitate for youth-led research in integration of traditional knowledge systems with modern technologies such as GIS. This is made in the Gambia, Banjul, on December 7, 2024. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Environmental sciences, disaster risk reduction, and so on. We might not have been at the very best position to have consumed or absorbed everything, but at least be able to capture a lot that we believe, together with everybody's collaboration, we'll be able to contribute to the betterment of our nation and Africa at large. That being the case, I would first thank Maud Lamin Sow for giving us the opportunity for being here, and most especially IAP, African Union Youth Advisory Board, as well as NDMA and all other experts that came in, including Dr. Umar, Dr. Sonko, Mr. Fakeba Kujabi, and all other individuals that were here today and yesterday for having impacted our lives. And we are assuring everybody that we would make sure whatever knowledge we have acquired here will be used in our best abilities, and making sure that it was a pleasure to have been here, and of course, thank you all.
Thank you very much. On behalf of myself and on behalf of the National Disaster Management Agency and on behalf of the government, I really want to take this opportunity to thank every one of you. And in the same vein, I want to stand on an existing protocol to really thank Ruth and Doctor for these are people who are almost the supermarket of knowledge, because what they share with us, I think, is very interesting. Again, I want to thank the government of the Gambia for creating the enabling and conducive environment. Because without peace and stability, what we have been here for wouldn't have happened. Other countries in the sub-region, what we are doing here cannot do it simply because they lack peace and stability in those countries. So we must really appreciate the government and thank the government for creating that conducive and enabling environment to make us deliver our mandate for what we are here today. Really. It is an honor, once again, and privilege for a closing ceremony. A space where the voices, ideas, and energy of young people take center stage in this conversation about disaster risk reduction. Today, we unite with a shared purpose to ensure that our communities are better prepared for the challenges posed by disaster and to empower youths. As essential agents of change in shaping a safer and more resilient future for all. Youth today represent over half of the world's population. As the next generation of leaders, innovators, and change makers, you hold the key to developing new strategies and solutions to the growing impact of disasters, whether they are natural, technological, or human-induced, but this is a great responsibility. And this responsibility comes with even greater opportunities. Young people are the only victims of disaster, but they are also the most powerful advocates for disaster resilience. You are at the forefront of innovation, bringing fresh perspective, energy, and a deep understanding of your community's needs. As we know, disasters have a disproportionate impact on vulnerable populations, and young people, especially those in the most affected region, often find themselves in the line of disaster. However, despite the challenges, youth also are the driving change on the ground, from raising awareness to organizing community responses and even leading recovery efforts. You have proven time and time again that your ideas are not only just solutions for tomorrow, but also for today. This conference is not only a platform for discussion, it is a call to action. It is an opportunity to share best practice, collaborate across borders, and highlight the innovative work that young people are already doing in disaster risk reduction. It is also a reminder that the work we begin here will continue long after the conference ends. Through partnership, collaboration, and determination, we can create a world where disaster resilience is woven into the fabrics of our society, where youths are empowered, and where every community has the tools not only to survive, but thrive in the face of disaster. Today, we have engaged in important dialogue, build new networks, and inspire one another to take bold steps towards lasting change. I urge every one of you to speak up, share your ideas, and take full advantage of the resources and opportunities that this conference offers. Together, we can harness our collective strength to build more resilient world for future generations. In this closing, I would like to express my deepest gratitude to each of you for being here today. Your presence is a testament to your commitment to making a difference, and your passion and creativity will be the driving force of our success. Let us all take this moment as an opportunity to unite our effort, learn from one another, and set a course towards a future where young people are not only survivors of disaster, but architects of resilience. So on that note, I really want to take this opportunity to thank every one of you for your participation during this workshop. Thank you. Thank you.